Jordan checked his account at 11:47 on a Wednesday night. Not because he needed to, he'd already checked it twice that day. He knew the number, but there's something about late-night checking the same way you open the fridge when you're not hungry. You already know what's in there, you just need to see it again. The number hadn't changed. He put his phone face down on the nightstand, stared at the ceiling, and thought, I know exactly what I'm doing wrong. I know exactly what I should be doing instead. So why isn't any of it happening? That question, that specific gap between knowing and doing, that's what this video is actually about. Because here's the thing, Jordan isn't unusual. He's not financially illiterate. He's not lazy. He's not making the same mistakes out of carelessness. He understands compound interest. He's watched the videos. He knows the rules. And he still can't seem to follow them. And if you've ever been in that exact spot, knowing the right move and somehow not making it anyway, then what I'm about to tell you is going to explain something you probably thought was a personal failure. It isn't. It's neuroscience, and it's older than money itself. Here's where we need to start. Your brain was not designed for the financial world you're living in. That sounds obvious, but most people hear that and picture something vague like, oh, we're not built for modern life. That's not what I mean. I mean something much more specific. There is a predictable, measurable neurological event that happens inside your brain at a certain point in your financial life. And when it happens, it quietly dismantles the exact mental equipment you need to make good decisions. It doesn't feel like anything unusual, it just feels like stress, like low-grade anxiety, like the kind of background noise you've learned to live with. But underneath that background noise, something is actually shutting down. We'll get to exactly what that is. But first I need to explain why it happens, because the why is the part that changes how you see all of this. 200,000 years ago, your ancestors lived in a world with one financial problem: not enough. Not enough food, not enough safety, not enough resources to survive the next season. And the brain that evolved inside that world became extraordinarily good at one thing: detecting scarcity and treating it as a threat to survival. When resources dropped below a certain threshold, the brain triggered a specific response. Not a thoughtful one, not a strategic one, a fast one. The kind of response designed to keep you alive in the next 48 hours, not plan for the next 48 years. That response looked like this: pull back, protect what you have, avoid risk, focus only on what's immediately in front of you. Sound familiar? Here's what most people don't know about that response. It didn't stay in the past. The brain you are running right now is largely the same brain that ran those calculations 200,000 years ago. The hardware barely changed. What changed is everything around it. And this is where the problem starts to become visible. Because your brain cannot tell the difference between we are running low on food in winter and the tribe might not survive, and my account balance is lower than I'm comfortable with on a Tuesday afternoon. At the neurological level, the level below thought, below reason, below the part of your brain that knows the difference between 2024 and 200,000 BC, those two situations feel identical. And identical situations trigger identical responses. Now here's the part that shifts everything. When your brain registers that kind of threat, real or imagined, ancient or modern, it does something measurable and specific. It begins to reroute resources. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for long-term planning, impulse control, rational decision-making, calculating consequences, gets partially deprioritized. The brain essentially says, we don't have time for long-term thinking right now. We are in danger. We need fast decisions, not careful ones. This is not a metaphor. This is what happens in studies. Princeton researchers showed in 2013 that people under financial stress showed a measurable drop in cognitive function equivalent to losing roughly 13 IQ points. Not because they were less intelligent, because the stress of financial scarcity was consuming mental bandwidth, the same way running too many applications slows down a phone. Think about what that actually means. The moments when you most desperately need to think clearly about money, when your balance is low, when bills are stacking, when you're trying to figure out how to get out of a tight spot, are the exact moments your brain is least capable of that kind of thinking. The crisis takes the tools you need to solve the crisis. That's not a personal failure, that's a design flaw, and it's been sitting inside every financial decision you've ever made under pressure. You might already be pushing back on this, something like, okay, but I'm not in survival mode, I'm not starving, my brain should know the difference. And that reaction makes complete sense. But notice what it's doing. It's assuming your prefrontal cortex is in charge of making that assessment. It isn't. The threat evaluation doesn't happen at the rational level. It happens deeper, in structures that don't have access to your calendar, your salary, or your understanding of inflation. The amygdala doesn't read bank statements, it reads signals. And the signals of financial stress, the cortisol, the hypervigilance, the low-grade background anxiety, are the same signals your ancestors had when the threat was genuinely existential. Your rational brain knows you're not dying. Your nervous system isn't sure. And in a disagreement between those two systems, the nervous system wins almost every time. This is where Jordan's story comes back. Because the question Jordan was lying in bed asking, why do I keep not doing what I know I should do, has a more specific answer than discipline or mindset. When Jordan's balance drops to a certain number, a number that isn't about objective survival but about the psychological threshold his brain learned sometime before he turned 12, something shifts. Not visibly, not dramatically, he doesn't feel like he's in danger. He just feels like he can't think straight. He makes a purchase he didn't plan. He avoids opening the budgeting app for a week. He decides to deal with it later, and then later never comes. He knows these are the wrong moves, but the knowing and the doing are operating in different parts of his brain, and the part that makes the decisions is running on threat protocols, not rational planning. Here's the part most people never connect. Jordan's psychological threshold, the account balance that triggers his brain's scarcity response, probably has nothing to do with his current income. It's calibrated to a financial reality he observed in childhood, the number his parents got nervous at, the conversations he overheard, the feeling in the house at the end of the month. His brain is solving a problem that no longer exists, using tools designed for a world he no longer lives in. And it keeps getting him. This is the part most finance content skips entirely, because it doesn't fit the just budget better narrative. The advice isn't wrong. Budgeting works, saving works, investing works, every financial tool you've ever been given works under the right neurological conditions. The problem is that those conditions disappear exactly when you need them most. You can want to change your financial behavior. You can understand why you should change it. And still, under the right kind of stress, your brain will root around every rational intention you have and do what it was designed to do: manage the immediate threat. Not the long-term one. The immediate one. If you've watched this far and something in this is feeling uncomfortably familiar, good. That discomfort is information. The fact that you're connecting this to your own life rather than treating it as abstract theory means something is clicking. There's more of this to unpack on this channel, and it gets into the specific patterns rather than just the mechanism. If that's the kind of conversation you're looking for, subscribe now. The next piece builds directly on this one. So what do you actually do with this? Because I want to be honest here, I'm not going to give you a 5-step system for reprogramming your brain. That's not what this is, and if someone has told you that, they simplified it past the point of truth. What I can give you is something more useful than a system, a different frame for what's actually happening when you make a financial decision you regret. The frame is this: your financial behavior under stress is not a character problem, it is a calibration problem. Your brain is doing exactly what it was built to do, it's just built for conditions that no longer apply. The calibration is off, and calibration can shift. Not quickly, not with a single video or a budgeting app or a financial plan, as useful as those things can be. But it can shift through something most financial advice doesn't mention: consistent low-threat exposure to financial information. Here's what I mean. If every time you look at your finances you're already in a stress state, already behind, already anxious, already in problem-solving mode, your brain associates financial information with threat, and brains avoid threats. So the avoidance kicks in. The app doesn't get opened, the statement doesn't get read, the conversation doesn't happen. But if you can build a habit of engaging with your finances during low-stress moments, not to solve problems, just to look, you begin to train a different association. Financial information stops triggering the scarcity response quite so fast. The threshold moves. Slowly, but it moves. There's something else here, and it's the piece I mentioned earlier that most people miss entirely. Remember that psychological threshold, the account balance that triggers Jordan's brain into threat mode, the one calibrated to his childhood financial reality. Most people are operating on a threshold they never chose and never examined. And the threshold isn't just a number. It's a whole set of embedded beliefs about what money means, what having it says about you, what losing it means about your worth. These aren't conscious beliefs. They're more like background assumptions, so old and so deep they don't feel like beliefs at all. They feel like facts. You don't think money is scarce and people like me don't accumulate it. You just feel somehow that certain financial outcomes aren't really in reach, not for you specifically, just in general, just the way things are. That feeling isn't a personality trait, it's a learned neural pathway, and neural pathways can be interrupted. Not by positive thinking, not by affirmations, but by repeated exposure to evidence that contradicts the embedded assumption, small, specific, real evidence you can actually point to in your own life. Every month you build a small buffer, the threshold calibrates slightly. Every time you look at a financial number without it leading to a crisis, the association weakens. Every decision you make from a position of even marginal stability instead of acute stress trains a slightly different response pattern. This is slow, I want to be honest about that. This is measured in months and years, not days. But it is how it actually works. Not willpower, recalibration. Jordan checked his account again in the morning. Different number this time, not because anything dramatic had happened, but because he'd moved $40 into savings the night before. Just 40. Not because 40 was going to change anything in the short term. Because he was trying to teach his nervous system something different. That $40 wasn't really about money. It was about evidence, slowly, quietly building a record his own brain could start to believe. Here's where we land. Your brain isn't working against you out of carelessness. It's working against your financial future because it's working for your perceived survival, and it's doing it with tools built for a world that no longer exists. The scarcity response is real. The cognitive narrowing is real. The threshold calibrated in childhood is real, and none of it is a personal failing. But here's the thing about real problems with real mechanisms. They have real solutions, not magical ones, not fast ones, but real ones. And the first step is almost always the same. Stop treating a neurological pattern like a character flaw. Because as long as you're fighting yourself, you're fighting with the wrong frame. Once you see what's actually happening, once you understand the mechanism and not just the symptom, the older way of thinking about this starts to feel incomplete. And once that shift happens, it tends to stay with you longer than you'd expect. If this changed even slightly how you look at your own financial behavior, not as failure, but as a system running outdated software, then you're already noticing something most people never look for. There's more of this on the channel. Every video goes a little deeper into how money actually behaves in real life and in real minds. The next one picks up a thread from this one that we didn't have time to fully pull on today.